As the results were rolling in from Nevada, CNN and MSNBC were reacting very differently to what they were seeing. MSNBC personalities were not having a great time, and Chris Matthews is probably number one on that list. Let's take a look at how he reacted to some of the news.
I'm with Carville all the way in terms of the dangers of what lies ahead in November. I'm very much aware of them. They're sitting on so much Oppo research on Bernie, what he said in the past about world affairs, how far left he is. I'm not sure how far left he is, but they're going to make the most of that in terms of world politics. They're going to kill him. But I think it's a little late to stop him, and I think that's the problem. I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy too. I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940, and the general, Reynaud, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling.
So he had that suppressed feeling, but he got over the suppression and he vocalized it on live TV that Bernie Sanders' win in the Nevada caucuses was like the Nazis rounding the Maginot Line.
He's a history guy. He's a history guy. A little light reading before bed, right? You know, he wants to read about
I like
World
that.
War II. Fine.
That's cool.
But he's clearly not grasping like 95% of it, just remembering the events and not any of the context, the fact that Hitler was an extreme right-winger among them. But what I do think is interesting is that there is some blowback to MSNBC's barrage of hatred towards Bernie Sanders. The Democratic voter base, even though, yes, they're older if they're watching MSNBC, they're not gonna be like Fox News sheep that just respond to the messaging and the legs and everything that they're seeing on that program and do whatever they're told there. They're gonna have they have independent thought more so, and the number one thing that Democrats want is to defeat Donald Trump. So as Bernie Sanders keeps racking up these victories, I guarantee you the audience, no matter how moderate, centrist, older, they're gonna get frustrated with the hosts just constantly attacking him because they don't want that. They want to have a strong candidate against Donald Trump in the general election. The leadership and the elites don't want Bernie Sanders to win and will tear him down no matter what, it doesn't matter. But the regular viewers, it's different. And I think they're gonna get blowback from their viewership on this.
The grasping at straws is getting extreme. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but and I'm not sure if he was. You have to sometimes rethink your approach, the way you're gonna say something, and what this comparison could sound like. Because I don't think it was in the forefront of his head about how ridiculous this comparison was gonna sound once it came out. He was just thinking, oh man, I've been against this guy the whole time, which he mentioned in that clip. He goes, yeah, I agree with Carville, and I do think there's gonna be a problem to come. But he's accepting finally, at least on air, that this seems to be going this direction. And that's hard to swallow already, but then he feels like he's already being open about even admitting that, because they wouldn't do that before. So when your opposition to the Bernie Sanders campaign has gone from he's a socialist to, oh man, what about his health? Or those Bernie bros, they're so mad, I hate the tone. Why is he yelling all the time? Look at his hair, oh my God, look at those glasses. And then you go to he can't win, and then he keeps winning, so now that's been dispelled. The only thing left is start comparing it to really horrible things throughout our history. So let's not repeat that now. Okay, let's not repeat that. And in a way, it's the same scare tactics we've been going with. And you mentioned the history guy thing. This is one of those like broadcasting little cues to make it seem like you've been always up to date. You're constantly, every time I go home, and man, it was 11:39, I was falling asleep, and I said, let me go out and break out this book about World War II.
Yes, you're very erudite and smart, right?
Yeah, well, it's fine. And not to say he never read that before, but no, last night you didn't crack open the book and then check out that one section right before Bernie Sanders won Nevada about how the Nazis went and took over France in the summer of 40. Calm down. Just say, hey, remember? Say it in that way, but I don't know, I guess it works. Because Newt Gingrich always talks about how he's a historian. Bill O'Reilly, I'm a historian. So you can say whatever you want.
And we're leaving out the context that Bernie Sanders, as much of his family died in the Holocaust, and it's extremely offensive to make that comparison. And Matthews has been a broadcaster for years and years. He should have had the foresight to not say something like that.
Yeah, but to be fair, his reputation is just he opens his mouth and just stuff comes out. Let me ask you each a question. I don't think we have the TYT Supreme Court, but let's do an informal TYT Supreme Court. He said what he said. We showed you the video. You probably remember when Chuck Todd quoted the author and didn't correct it or finesse it or anything, the digital brown shirts. I took that to be, no, you know at least to some extent what you're trying to do. With the Chris Matthews comment that he just made, is he guilty? In that, like,
Yes.
is it an unfortunate thing that he said, or is it like, oh, come on, man, you're calling Bernie Sanders a Nazi or a Hitler?
He's not calling him a Nazi, but likening his movement to that is really offensive in so many ways.
Okay.
Not just because Bernie Sanders had family that died in the Holocaust, and that's such a horrible thing to compare it to, but two, because the movement is antithetical to exactly what he's talking about. A military-style takeover of France, where with the Third Reich, are you kidding me? All Bernie Sanders does is talk about giving you health care and college and love. That's insane. Love, he's like, Marianne Williamson endorsed him, the politics of love, right? Like he's a hippie. That's the kind of presidential campaign that he's running. It's crazy, it's nuts. And partnering it with what he said about that he was gonna get hung in Central Park or hanged, excuse me, that's weird, the English language is just bizarre. But I mean, it just goes to show that his perception of the politics of Bernie Sanders and the politics of the Democratic Party is so out of whack and tied up in his emotional reaction to his taxes going up and feeling like he's losing grip on power.
No, the illustration, the comparison was supposed to be there to show how big of a deal this is that he's taken over. In reality, it illustrated how much people like Chris Matthews are fearful of this happening.
Right.
So he's like, this is so big, it's evoked in me the feelings of wondering how bad this could be for the world because of how bad that was for the world. If anything, that shows your fear of normal things happening. And usually, like, I talk about how Buttigieg doesn't say anything. Everyone talks about how Buttigieg doesn't really say anything. But that's what flies perfectly for these types of pundits. It's fine, like, it sounds good. We're still Americans. Throughout our history, Americans have said lofty, beautiful, golden things about the country while doing horrible things behind those same closed doors. And then so when someone exposes it, they go, hey, shush, you're making us look bad. And here, you're gonna change it? This has been working pretty well for us. So once that gets challenged, we're worried about how we look exposed, how it's always kind of been this way, and also that people are enough people are following the same movement and are also identifying it the same way. And they don't want any of those things to come out.
So that's guilty.
Well, not guilty that he was trying to call him a Nazi, but I mean, it's kind of an illustration of how he feels. I don't think he's saying he's a Nazi. He's gonna start rounding up certain groups of people and doing this and that.
For a history buff, he's making an emotional connection with something that's quite horrible, with something that's quite horrible to him right now. And so that's the connection he's making: a political movement that was horrible in history, and the political movement that's horrible to Chris Matthews' pocketbook.
Yeah, like it's crazy.
Pocketbook,
like
not wallet, pocketbook.
Yeah, like Republicans will call black Democrats, will compare it to slavery, but I don't think they really in their mind are thinking that they're going to be enslaved, put on a field, and not allowed to work, and not paid for their work. What they mean is that they think that they're mentally enslaved. Okay. So they like that comparison. It's still horrible, and it's still comparing to a genocidal act that we had in this country, but it's not actually physically calling them that.
Yeah, I guess. Look, I found your arguments pretty persuasive. I guess I can't necessarily explain how, but it feels less intentional than Chuck Todd's comment to me. It feels like Chuck Todd wanted to make the comparison.
Yes,
that's
I'll give
just
you
the
that.
way it feels. Like Chris Matthews, like he is this sort of blundering guy who says a bunch of stuff. With Chuck, it felt more intentional. I don't know exactly why. I could be wrong, but that was how I felt.
No, you're right. But if we're comparing it to that,
yeah, I want to catch up on all of the references to Bernie being a Nazi. My question out of the audience is, which pundit will do it next week?
So one small quick question I guess that I have then, because there's calls for Chris Matthews to resign or be fired. Where do you guys fall?
When so I had read it at first and I tweeted he should be fired. I hadn't I'd read the quote. I would agree that maybe I should delete it, right? I would agree with John. No, it did well. I'm joking.
Moral social media relevance.
Right. No, but look, I think it's borderline, but it sounds less bad than it reads.
Plus, he's smiling. It seems less threatening if the person's smiling, I guess.
When I read it, I was more outraged than when you see him actually say
it. So
no
firing, no resignation.
I don't know.
Yeah, how about this? As a general rule,
Right.
how about say the next person who compares the Jewish presidential candidate who lost family members in the Holocaust to a Nazi. That person's suspended for 6 months. We'll let the first 2 go free.
Severe
the
warning.
Third one.
Severe warning for Chris Matthews.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.